Okay, the other part of the solar story is, of course, the rooftop solar. About 30% of the total solar, I think, is contributed by rooftop solars, with Germany and China dominating, India picking up, and many other countries, especially states like California in the US, doing very well as well. The ranking by 2050 is 10 for this one. Reduced CO2 is about 24.6 gigatons. Net cost 453.1 billion US dollars, and net savings are estimated at 3.46 trillion dollars. Okay, I will add some extraneous information here. It's a very short module, so I'll just add some information that broadly relates to renewables. So what are the safest and cleanest sources of energy? This is again from Our World in Data, which I already mentioned. So the death rates from accidents and air pollution from coal, oil, natural gas, biomass, hydropower, nuclear, and wind, and then solar. You can see that the number drops significantly with 25% of the global energy coming from coal, 31% from oil, 23% from natural gas, and then solar is down at 1%. Even if this increases to 25%, the number of deaths is not going to go up this way. And then there are other costs issues, of course, cleaner air and water, health impacts, etc. Greenhouse gas emissions, again, for the same. Obviously, coal is a monstrous greenhouse gas emitter, 820 tons, 273 times higher than nuclear energy, for example. And it also includes other things like sulfur, PM 2.5, the particulate matter, which is very harmful, and so on. Oil, a little bit lower than that. Natural gas, much lower. A lot of the reduction in greenhouse gases in the recent decade in the US, for example, has come from increased use of natural gas and away from coal and oil. Biomass is down there with high uncertainty depending on which biomass is exactly the source, and then solar is, of course, way down here. That's kind of a good motivation, but there is additional factors like the price of electricity from new power plants. If you look at price of electricity from solar, it has declined by 89% in the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, whereas the gas peaker, which means the plant that's able to supply power at peak demand, has dropped from 275 to 175, but this is purely related to availability of new sources of gas in countries like the US and the supply associated with that. So it's a market force, not anything else. Solar thermal, minus 16% drop, whereas nuclear has gone up by 26% over the same period. Onshore wind down by from 135 to $1.41 per kilowatt hour, per megawatt hour, I think, and the coal has remained almost the same, minus 2% drop. Gas has dropped minus 32%. Solar photovoltaic has dropped from $3.59 to $1.40. That's 89% drop. So that's a monstrous saving there. And along with that, the price of solar modules have declined by 99.6% since 1976. So you can see the cost here going from 1 megawatt up to more than 100,000 megawatts from 1976 at $100 down to now less than half a dollar. Okay, of course there are other costs involved, installing, loans, incentives, extra reinforcements needed to put them on the roof and make them protected against winds and so on and so forth. Electricity from renewables in general became cheaper as we increased capacity. So electricity from nuclear and coal did not over this period of 2009 to 2019. This is just similar to what we just looked at as additional information on offshore and onshore winds, which also have shown significant decline in cost in terms of levelized cost of energy without subsidies. There are details, like many of the subsidies for solar and wind are often blamed by various vested interest as the reason why they are so cheap. Nuclear energy actually is argued to be safe, carbon friendly, climate friendly, and so on, but politically it seems quite unacceptable in terms of the worries about nuclear accidents. One Chernobyl and one Fukushima will leave long-term damage in terms of people's perceptions. There are newer technologies of smaller reactors and so on. Plus the disposal of nuclear waste is also always a big concern in people's minds. Nonetheless, if we look at the history of solar, actually way back in the 1880s, Charles Fritz had found that selenium on top of metal could produce electricity. Actually, they didn't know the physics of it at all. They thought it was related to heat, even though Fritz did call it photoelectric, I think. And then I think Edison had already put up plants for harvesting solar energy. It's only Einstein's work on photons of light being energy that changed the perception. I was going to add a figure here. It shows, let me put that and then come back to it. So this shows the democratization of energy in many ways. So this is a Euro's mother and her two daughters on one of the 42 floating islands made of totora reeds on Lake Titicaca. Their delight upon receiving their first solar panel is infectious. Installed at an elevation of 12,507 feet, the panel will replace kerosene and provide electricity to her family for the first time. Imagine that. As high-tech as solar may be, it's perfect. It's a perfect cultural map. The Uru people know themselves as Lupi Hawks, sons of the sun. Amazing, right? Even in Bangladesh, for example, there are a significant number of rooftop solar installed. So poor countries, poor people, if they can produce their own energy, then you solve many problems, especially with rooftop solar. You're going to help climate action, but you're also going to democratize energy access, reduce energy poverty, and overall increase energy security for countries, which is phenomenal. So the rooftop solar assumes that rooftop solar PV can grow from 0.4% of electricity generation globally to 7% by 2050. That growth can avoid 24.6 gigatons of emissions. That is a very impressive contribution to drawdown. We assume an implementation cost of $18.83 per kilowatt, dropping to $6.27 per kilowatt by 2050. Over 3 decades, the technologies could save $3.4 trillion in home energy costs. Okay, so for each one we are showing the ranking and the savings, so you know how the savings are calculated and how the net costs are calculated. So again, rooftop solar seems like a no-brainer, and it is catching on, it is growing, and all aspects of it are kind of having a positive feedback in bringing the cost down and bringing the price of the energy down along with it.